achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming UFC Ultimate Fighter 17 finale, which will take place on April 13th, 2013. And what I'm going to do is there's three main card fights we know of right now. I'm going to break all three of those fights down. And as of right now, the semifinals on the show have not happened yet. They have, but we haven't aired yet. So I'm going to give my predictions for the two semifinal fights, and then the final fight that I think will come as a result of my predictions. And then I will also provide very brief predictions for the two other potential final fights if I am wrong in any fashion. And usually when I do this, I do very well with the Ultimate Fighter, breaking these down. I've had a lot of success in the past. We'll see how that goes. I'm coming off a very strong event. I went 9-4 at UFC on Fuel TV 9. I had a couple of fighters. I couldn't pull the trigger on the Reza Madadi fight, even though my bet packs said he was a worthwhile bet, and I said Michael Johnson was a no play for me, even though I predicted him just for exactly what we saw. So that, to win some, you lose some. And the bet packs did very well. I think I had at least 4, maybe 5 parlays that won, including one paid over 16 to 1 on your dollar. One of my big prop bets was taking Ross Pearson and knockout Ryan Couture, and that came through as well. So the bet packs did very well, and they will be up and running again for the Ultimate Fighter finale. So please jump on board, invest your money, and see if we can make some cash together. Again, available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Also, the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament, the second season is the registration starting to fill up. Please get in as soon as possible. You can see all the details. It's the hardest tournament to win on the web, bar none. We already have multiple representatives from multiple different countries. Canada, USA, Scotland, Brazil, and Netherlands are 5 off the top of my head I can think of. Last time when it was all said and I think we had 9 different countries represented. It's a fantastic tournament. Hardest tournament to win anywhere when it comes to fantasy MMA predicting. And again, I said you can go to the website, check out the page with all the instructions, and you can see the bracket from last year. It's a very fun tournament, and not a single YouTube expert, MMA expert, made it past the second round with the exception of myself. I made it to the third round before I got eliminated. Either way, it's great fun. Thank you very much to all of my sponsors. All the links are available in the video description or over on the website. And I want to get to my first prediction of the night, so let's get to her. Our first prediction comes in the UFC's heavyweight division as Travis Hoffa Browne, 13-1-1, battles Gabriel Gonzaga, 14-6-0. Browne is coming off the first loss of his career against Antonio Silva, while Gabriel Gonzaga has won 3 in a row, including a submission over Ben Rothwell in his most recent appearance. Now, one thing we always get with these heavyweights is the physical disparities. Browne's 6'7", will have a 5-inch height advantage over Gabe Gonzaga, and depending on what they weigh in at, between 10 and 15 pounds, he'll weigh in 10 and 15 pounds more than Gonzaga as well. Only a 2-inch reach advantage, but still some big edges for Hoffa in that category. Now, Browne, he's returning after a knee injury, which he suffered in the Antonio Silva fight, coming off, as I said, his first career defeat, and it was a knockout, so we'll see how he responds in this matchup. For Gonzaga, he's a BJJ black belt. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, all of them by submission, and he's returning to his BJJ roots, where he is 9-0 in fights that end by submission. Gabe averages 3.42 takedowns per fight at a 51% clip, which is pretty solid. But Browne, 100% takedown defense, and he himself, when he goes for takedowns, completes them 78% of the time at roughly just under 2.5 per fight. Now, when you look at the guys that have tried to take Browne off his feet, not a lot of action that way. Antonio Silva went 0 for 2. Czech Congo went 0 for 2. That's all Browne's really faced. He's never really faced a guy who is takedown-oriented like I expect Gabriel Gonzaga to be. Now, Browne, if the fight does go to the ground, is a BJJ purple belt, 2 wins by submission. But simply put, he needs to keep this fight standing against a horse like a beast like Gonzaga on the mat. Now, Gonzaga went 3 for 8 in his takedowns versus Ben Rothwell, and Rothwell was struggling with some injuries and clearly exhausted in that fight, which allowed Gonzaga to eventually put him down. Gonzaga did a nice job of punching and jumping on a single leg, lots of pressure, continuing for those takedowns, but he had a little bit of trouble keeping Rothwell down, and it really seemed to wear him out a little bit. Now, Gabe, when he had his trouble, he was too focused on his striking earlier in his career after the knockout of Mirko Krokop. He does have 5 wins by knockout if he can connect, but he's also got 5 losses by knockout. His striking is very serviceable, and he can use it to mix things up, and he hurt Rothwell a couple of times when he tagged him. Now, he's had trouble in the past against elite heavyweights, losing to guys like Junior Dos Santos, Shane Carwin, Fabricio Verdum twice. Big-time heavyweights have given him a lot of trouble. Browne, very fast on his feet, unorthodox approach with his striking, but he holds his hands down, uses a lot of movement. His cardio seems to suffer a little bit in longer fights because it's hard to fight that Dominic Cruz heavy movement style when you're fighting at heavyweight. Browne has serious power. We saw him knock out Stefan Struve. 9 of his 13 wins have come by knockout. But he needs to be very careful not to get caught with those hands down, because Gonzaga has the power to hurt anybody he can connect with. For Gonzaga, he needs to get the fight to the ground ASAP and keep it there. Now, Gonzaga has had trouble with speed and pressure and power of Brendan Schaub when they fought. But, he's capable of holding out there. Like I said, he did hurt Shane Carwin when he connected. So, again, if he's able to land, he could put Browne in some trouble. But what I forecast is that Browne's speed and movement will make it very hard for Gonzaga to get the fight to the ground, and his size will wear out Gabriel whenever he does get his hands on him and try to drag him down. So my prediction is Travis Browne to defeat Gabriel Gonzaga by TKO. Our next prediction comes in the UFC's women's bantamweight division, with the winner of this getting to coach opposite Ronda Rousey on the next Ultimate Fighter, and we'll get eventually a shot at the women's title. It'll feature former Strikeforce champion Miesha Cupcake Tate, 13-3-0, against undefeated Kat Zingano. Tate, last time we saw her was in her final Strikeforce appearance with a submission win over Julie Kedzie in a very entertaining fight. If you had a chance to check it out, please do. And Kat Zingano, her last fight was at Invicta FC 3, where she defeated Raquel Pennington via second round submission. Now, Zingano is a BJJ purple belt and a 4-time national wrestling champion, and we all know Miesha Tate, very good wrestler. Very decorated and a lot of submission skills. We've seen her do that in the cage multiple times. Now, Zingano has competed at 125, and she's won some titles in that division. And we said Tate, the former 135-pound champion. It'll be interesting to see how Zingano fares against Tate, because Tate's a big, strong girl. Now, Kat, Muay Thai striking, nice combinations, decent leg kicks, nice straight kicks, but her bread and butter is her clinch work. Lots of clinch work, really works the knees to the body, lots of dirty boxing, in close, very good on the ground, nice trip takedowns. I saw her land a lateral drop in her last fight on the mat, very tight top control, smothers, good transitions, goes sub-hunting, very difficult to deal with from the top position. Now, Tate, she holds some submission wins over some notable fighters, including Marlos Kunin when she won the title, also tapped out Julie Kedzie in her last fight, and she overall has faced better competition than her opponent. She's a grinder. Against Kunin, she kept on top and kept working and eventually wore her down before she set up that arm choke, which was very well set up. She gave Ronda Rousey some trouble on the ground, but at the same time against Hitomi Akano, she had some difficulties in that fight. Akano, a very versed judo player. Good takedown numbers, averages 3.46 per fight at a 40% clip, but her takedown defense about 25%, so she could end up on her back against a very good grappler in Zingano. In the Kedzie fight, she came out very aggressive with her striking. She got hurt right off the bat, and she really struggled in that matchup. Every time she shot on Kedzie, she lost position and couldn't really power through Julie's hips, and that gave her a lot of difficulty on the mat. When she did go to the ground and wound up on her back, she attacks off her back. She's very aggressive in that, very dangerous. Good transitions, excellent scrambles when the fighters get going. Against Kedzie, she eventually rolled for the armbar for the victory, and that showed a lot of heart because she took a beating in that matchup. But on the feet, she was getting eaten up by Julie, and that was something difficult to watch as she was getting wailed on. And if you go back further in her career against Sarah Kaufman had similar success. So I don't think Tate wants to stand with Zingano, because Zingano's striking is pretty decent. And one thing for Tate, she needs to have her wrestling to fall back on to be successful, and I think that's one of the areas she's going to struggle with here. I would expect Zingano is going to be the better striker, and her wrestling could either nullify or even be better than Tate's, and I think we're going to see Kat Zingano pull off what I'm expecting to be an upset and defeat Miesha Tate by decision. Alright, now what I'm going to do is give my predictions for the two upcoming Ultimate Fighter semifinals. First up, we have Kelvin Gastelum, 4-0, taking on Josh Saman, 9-2-0. The experience edge definitely goes Samani's 11 pro fights to just Gastelum's 4. He's fought in Bellator against Dan Kramer, and he holds a win over former Ultimate Fighter competitor Chris Cope. Physical edge also to Saman's 6'2" to Gastelum's 5'9", and he'll have a 7-inch reach advantage. Saman on his career, 5 wins by knockout, 3 by submission. Gastelum, only 4 pro fights, I said 2 by knockout, 2 by sub, so he's been able to put his opponents away in each of those matchups. Gastelum, youngest fighter in the history of the tough, and he's done very well, even though he was a very low pick on the rung. In the early pick selection. Gastelum, great chin, very strong kicking game, will attempt subs, has some power. He's a little bit wild when he gets going. He had trouble with both Bubba and in the qualifier round on the ground. He was in a lot of bad positions and fighting off submissions, but the cardio was the difference and he was able to endure those situations. Saman does a nice job of punch and shoot for takedowns, big shots from the clinch position, caught Thor when he was backing up and KO'd him, so he has lots of power. Came back with big power and hurt Quinlan with punches and knees and eventually put him away. He likes to come forward. He's very aggressive with his striking clinch. He will, when he gets the fight to the ground, he will pass, Big ground and pound, TKO stoppages, good back mount. He used that double fist ground and pound, which is something he can put guys away with. And both guys have endured a lot of bad spots, but rallied back to win their fights. I think Saman's ground game should be the difference, as I don't expect him to drop off like the other guys that Gastelum has faced. He's more refined, and my pick is Josh Saman to defeat Kelvin Gastelum by decision. Up next, we've got Urijah Hall, 7-2-0, taking on Dylan Andrews, 15-4-0. Andrews, 19 pro fights, 10 of 15 wins by knockout, so very impressive. He fought Jesse Taylor and Brian Ebersol, two very veteran fighters, lost to both of them. For Urijah Hall, 9 career fights, 2 pro losses against Costa Philippou and Chris Weidman. We already know what those guys are all about, high-level guys. For Hall, 4 wins by knockout, 2 by sub. Weidman did KO him for his one stoppage defeat. And as we've seen on the show, Hall is a dynamic striker, excellent footwork, good head movement, speed, a wide variety of strikes, brutal kicking attack. He doesn't get overwhelmed. He fights at a very measured and calculated pace, good defensive wrestling, and he also goes on the offensive with his grappling. For Andrews, he's a boxer, wrestler. He has decent hands, but his first instinct is to close the distance and tie up and look to try and get the fight to the ground. He's been able to take advantage of some opponents that made some bad choices and made some mistakes and capitalize, get top position, and maintain that for long durations of each round and win fights as a result. When he stood on the feet with some guys, he was getting clipped with some big shots, and I think that's what we're going to see here. Hall should be able to keep the fight standing or take it down if he wants, but he'll dictate the place this fight takes place. And my prediction is Urijah Hall to defeat Dylan Andrews by knockout. That sets up a final based on my predictions of Urijah Hall versus Josh Saman. And again, it's Hall's striking against Saman's aggressive pressure style. Like I said, Saman usually has success outworking his opponents and putting pressure on them and making them break. Now, Hall, when he fought Adam Sella, was doing a very good job of landing punches when Sella came forward and not panicking, not getting, flustered by the fact that Sella kept moving at him. Now, Saman had some trouble with the grappling of Thor, and we could see Urijah Hall mix things up a little bit and score some takedowns and get the top position and look to tax him and put some pressure on him. But I think overall Hall's striking will be the difference, and Hall's been a monster on the show, and I'm going to stick with the trends. My prediction is Urijah Hall to defeat Josh Saman by knockout and win the Ultimate Fighter 17. Now, in the event the 2 guys I predicted win the semifinals don't win, one of them doesn't win, both don't win, here are my other predictions. I've got Hall versus Gastelum, and Hall winning by knockout. I think Gastelum's shown an excellent chin throughout the entire show, but I don't think you want to let Hall land too frequently, and I think that's what will happen. And if Andrews upsets Urijah Hall and he faces Saman in the next round, or in the finals, I've got Andrews by decision. I think his wrestling get on top, remain very active enough to grind out a win. And finally, if Kelvin Gastelum meets Dylan Andrews, again, I think Andrews should be able to pick up a decision victory, again, using that top control and using his wrestling. So those are my predictions for the upcoming semifinal fights of the Ultimate Fighter 17, the finals based on who I think is going to win the semis, and the other options. I know it's a lot, but those are my picks for that. And now we're going to go to the main event. For our main event prediction, we're in the UFC's bantamweight division as the former WEC featherweight champion, the California Kid, Urijah Faber, 27-6-0, battles former title challenger, Scott Young Guns Jorgensen, 14-6-0. Faber's coming off a very impressive submission victory over Ivan Menjivar, while Scott Jorgensen also picking up a submission in his last appearance, knocking off John Albert. Now, first things first, in this matchup, Faber's going to have a size advantage, which is something he's not used to having. 2 inches of height and 3 inches of reach, which he should enjoy. Jorgensen, not a very big man. Faber, not either. But again, the edge goes to Faber. Looking at Faber, 5 of his 6 losses have come in title fights. The guy fights at a high caliber, and it takes a high caliber fighter to knock this guy off. But Scotty Jorgensen, no slouch. His last 3 losses have all come against champions. Former WEC champ Eddie Wineland, now title challenger. Interim champion Renan Barão, and injured champion Dominic Cruz. Both guys NCAA Division I wrestlers. Faber a BJJ brown belt with 15 wins by sub, including Menjivar, Brian Bowles, Takei Mizugaki, Rafael Sunsao. That's an impressive list. Jorgensen a purple belt, 5 wins by submission, including that last one over Albert. And Jorgensen has been tapped out once in his career very early on. Now, Jorgensen very strong on top when he gets the position. He KO'd Ken Stone from just the guard with his power, but he did have some trouble in the guard of John Albert. Was facing a lot of submission attempts, and it was in close a couple of times, especially that triangle choke. Comparing grappling stats, Jorgensen has the edge in a couple of them. He averages 2.5 takedowns per fight compared to Faber's 1.2. Jorgensen a 47% completion rate compared to Faber at 29%. But both guys have a 57% takedown defense, and I expect the grappling could cancel each other out a little bit and force this into the striking round. realm. Now, the only two guys that are able to take Faber off his feet, if Jorgensen attempts it, were Mike Browne and Dominic Cruz. Now, for Scotty Jorgensen flipping the table, when he is in fights that he cannot win the grappling battle, ties or loses based on takedowns, his record's 4-4, so certainly not nearly as effective a fighter without that wrestling to fall back on. And as I said, he's not the same fighter. His losses against Dominic Cruz, Hennon Browne, Eddie Wine, you saw how difficult it was for him to trade with those guys and find success without his wrestling. When both Faber and Jorgensen fought Hennon Browne, they both had trouble finding in the range because neither one of them are natural strikers. They're decent strikers. Faber a little bit bigger of an edge there, but neither one are as good as Browne. Couldn't get inside and were very frustrated. But you look at Faber, when he fought Eddie Wineland, he couldn't get those takedowns early, but he's able to change gears, and that's what's impressive about him. And he was eventually able to use his striking to get the better of Wineland, mix things up, and he's a seasoned veteran. I expect to see something like that going on in this fight. Jorgensen has power, only 2 wins by knockout, compared to Faber's 7. Again, that's a striking edge for Faber, at least in the power department. Faber, unorthodox striker, he uses his speed very well, changes things up, goes fast, goes slow. He had landed several big shots against Dominic Cruz, which he's a difficult guy to hit. Against Brian Bowles, he came out very aggressive and overwhelmed him with some big power shots. That was an impressive performance. Again, when you look at Scott Jorgensen, he was even struggling with the striking of Jeff Curran and had to go back to his wrestling to score takedowns. And he was taking damage versus Eddie Wineland significantly and really had no answer for it until he got knocked out. The cardio edge also goes to Faber. I'd say only slightly. Experience for Faber, though, in 5-round fights is big. He's gone the distance, gone 5 rounds 5 times in his career against Scott Jorgensen, just once, and this is a 5-round main event. I like what Urijah Faber brings to the table. He always rises to the occasion when this is a fight that threatens his stature in the division. I think that's what this does. So my prediction is Urijah Faber to defeat Scott Jorgensen by submission. So those are my predictions for the upcoming Ultimate Fighter 17 tournament semifinals and the finale. You'll be able to, whatever other fights get added to the main event, or the main card, they'll be available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with all of my preliminary predictions. Please go and check them out. Public picks will be posted eventually. The betting packs have been pretty strong the last 2 events and are cashing nicely, so please consider checking them out. The panel will be available with their picks, and the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament 2. Check it out. All the information there. It's a fantastic tournament. Really test your knowledge. Only $5 to register. And, you really get an opportunity to showcase your prediction skills, and you find out what you're made of as far as your MMA knowledge. I implore you to take the challenge. Maybe you'll wind up taking me on and seeing if you can eliminate me. Either way, as always, thank you very much for listening, and I'll be back here next time.